Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. I am so excited to have with us Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans and the former senior advisor to President Biden, who is in charge of the hugely influential and successful bipartisan infrastructure bill. Mitch, it is so lovely to see you. Welcome.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. You are now working on something called the Working Class Project. Tell us what that is.
Well, first of all, we got our clock cleaned in the last election. And as a consequence, Donald Trump has become president. And as you know, is dismantling basically America as we know it, abusing the power of the presidency, trying to expand it, doing things that nobody anticipated that he would do at this fast a pace. And so, one of the things we all have to do is stop that from happening. And I know that members of Congress are trying to do it. People around the country are trying to do it. People are doing everything they can to kind of reassert some guardrails around this democracy, and then holding Donald Trump accountable for the promises that he made, none of which he's kept. So we're coming up on the first 100 days of his presidency, which are the most cataclysmically chaotic 100 days that we've seen in the history of America. And I think history will render harsh judgment on where he is. But he's there because we lost. And if we want to change things, we have to have power. In order to do that, you have to win. You got to figure out why you lost and what was going on. And so when you just look at the exit data from the polling from the last campaign, there are lots of different reasons, and we ought to be harsh on ourselves about it because we have to rebuild. One of the things that's clear is that the Democratic Party over time, or the Democratic candidates who have run for president, have lost a significant block of voters that we used to have. And so this is the project that I'm working on that's called the Working Class Project is a very narrowly defined project for a very specific part of the electorate. It's not meant to exclude other parts. It's not meant to say that constitutional crises are not important. It's not meant to say that other issues that people think are of concern are unimportant. What we're trying to do is figure out why folks that used to vote for us are not voting for us now, notwithstanding the fact that we think that we've put policies in place, and you mentioned a couple of them, rebuilding America by, returning manufacturing, using products that are made in America, getting back into red states and red cities. There's a lot of policy work that we've done, but it didn't translate. And so one of the things that I thought was really important is for us to find out why. And because I'm a local elected official, I'm from the city of New Orleans. I grew up on the streets of New Orleans. I have 8 brothers and sisters. We all live in the same place where we were born, where we played football on the street and basketball. When I ran for state legislature 4 times, I knocked on 10,000 doors each time. I went back to my constituents each time and said, hey, I'm running for office. I'd love your support. Can you please tell me what's ailing you? What do you like? What don't you like? And notwithstanding the fact that it was basically the same legislative district, it was changed a little bit, that I got different stories all the time. And so if you want to represent people, you have to stay in touch with them, which means you have to go see them. Now, I ran for lieutenant and was elected lieutenant governor twice in a red state. And of course, I crisscrossed the state. And notwithstanding the fact that I was from New Orleans, which people would know as a blue city, I would call it one of the great multicultural melting pots in the history of the world, not necessarily red or blue, but everything all in. I also won in 64 parishes statewide, and I went to different parts of the state because you have to go see people and talk to them. And then, of course, I became mayor of the city for 8 years, and then I went to go work for President Biden, and I crisscrossed the country. I think I went to 181 cities, towns, and counties. And what I learned from all of that is that you have to constantly go see people, talk to them, and be with them, like physically be with them, so that you can connect with them. And one of the things I learned is people mostly have some pretty significant common sense, and they're decent. And even if they disagree with you, if you go sit with them and you listen to them and you talk to them, and you make a decision that is not the one that they want, they'll go, okay, I get that because I trust you because you came and you saw me and you talked to me. And so what I wanted to do was to take that theory of learning that gets transmitted into good governance and go to talk to folks that used to be for us that were not. And these are people who are making under $100,000, $75,000. And in this last election, which should be really alarming to Democrats, is people making less than $50,000 that used to be overwhelmingly for us have now started to move in the other direction. And there are clear reasons why. So we should just go see them. And so that's what this project is about. Happy to explain the scope of it, but that's essentially what it is. Go see people, go talk to them, find them where they are, listen to what they're saying, try to be responsive to their needs, because if you don't go fish where the fish are, if you don't go ask them, there's no reason for them to vote for you.
To many Democrats because they look at the achievements of the Biden administration and they said, look at all the things we did that benefited working people. And yet they were perceived as not interested in the concerns of working people. They're perceived as weak, ineffectual, obsessed with the wrong thing. How did that disconnect happen?
Well, both things are true. It is, in fact, true that Joe Biden, I think, has one of the great records in modern American history. We passed, as you know, the Recovery Act, which put money in people's pockets and stopped people from having to stand in food lines and saved tons of small businesses. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We passed, as you know, the infrastructure law that I helped oversee, and the CHIPS Act. And those pieces of legislation help kind of put money in people's pockets and rebuilt infrastructure, roads, bridges, airports, ports, waterways, created all kinds of manufacturing jobs in many red states, but it didn't transfer politically. Um, but but it's true that that stuff happened. So one of the questions is why, and I think in retrospect and in examining it, it's not really that hard to understand. Notwithstanding how vast the investments were, we have 73,000 projects going on all over the country. 73,000 is only 73,000. It's not 330 million. And the truth of the matter is that most American citizens who are busy every day trying to get up, trying to get their kids to school, trying to get to work, trying to get home, trying to make a living, trying to make their mortgage, trying to make sure they can just get there from paycheck to paycheck and then plop in bed and being exhausted, are not thinking about those macroeconomic indicators, no matter how good they are. What they're worried about on a day-to-day basis is the experience that they're having throughout the day. So if they feel unsafe, if they live in an unclean place, if they live in a place where groceries are really expensive, if they can't pay for their mortgage, if their insurance rates are high. And I think that they appropriately said to us, I know you want to crow about all the macro stuff, but it doesn't feel like you're touching me where I am. The micro feelings that hundreds of millions of people feel every day. And we were accused by the Republicans of concentrating on things maybe that we didn't, because of the ads did that. And I just think that some of it's tone, some of it's policy, some of it is misdirection, and some of it is just sometimes focusing on the wrong stuff, notwithstanding the fact that we think everything is important. And so what we're learning in these focus groups, and by the way, we're going to 21 states, we're going to the 7 battleground states, we're going to 7 states that we know that we can defend, and then we're kind of thinking about a very important thing that my dad taught me. Don't play your politics in the past, play your politics in the future. And although you can't predict the future, based on demographic trends, you can find out where people are moving to. And so there's some states that are going to have fewer people, some states that are going to have more. It's going to change the trajectory, which means that 2026 and 2028, and then elections into the next, cycle after reapportionment 2030 are going to look very different from how they look now. So you can't get stuck looking backwards. You have to look forward. And in these focus groups, they are designed for working class folks. We ask them what working class means to them. We don't decide that. What is working class? What is the difference between how you feel about being working class or middle class? What's the difference between being poor and working class? And you ask them to tell us what they think, not basically top down stuff. And this is just so basic that I think that we forgot to do the basic stuff. And if I have 5 kids and I coached all their teams. And for baseball practice, when we first start off, when that grass smells great and your glove smells good, girls or boys, you teach them the very fundamentals, the very basics, how you catch a grounder, how you hold your hand, how you throw the ball. This is true about any sport that you play. And inevitably, every year, whether it's in the NBA Finals or whether it's in the World Series, you will watch the most professional human being make the most basic mistake.
Right.
And
Right.
so I kind of always want to tell people, go back to basics. Learn how to do it the right way. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Quit assuming that you know everything. While you're looking down, make sure you look up to see what else is coming your way. And so this working class project is designed to do that very thing. And we're learning a lot of really painful lessons in just basically listening to people, and being open to what their concerns are about us, rather than us telling them that they don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. One of the things I think we've learned in the last 100 days is Democrats have to engage on issues that they have assumed are owned by the Republicans. For example, immigration. Immigration is now a losing issue for Trump because of the way he's conducted himself. So, is part of the solution here to engage on these issues, explain that, for example, Democrats do care about security, a secure border, and explain how they are going to keep people safe and keep the border orderly, but Trump is not, that he's being chaotic. Is that
Yeah.
part of the shift in thinking, to engage rather than avert attention or run away from issues?
Well, again, let me make a couple of comments. First, about Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump is a bully. He abuses power in ways that we haven't seen in the history of the country, maybe even the world. And the fact of the matter is, the only way to stop him is to literally stop him. You cannot appease Donald Trump, just like you can't appease Putin. What Donald Trump is doing in Ukraine and in Russia is a travesty. You don't build peace by surrendering to somebody who aggressed, and basically took parts of a country. We don't allow that to happen in the world. And so you have to fight back. No, you have to fight Donald Trump back, particularly because he has told you many, many times, and he's unabashed about that. He's amoral in many spaces, but in this particular space, he's like, look, I have power, you don't. I'm going to take what you have unless you stop me. And he actually has respect for people who stop him. So I don't know. It seems to me that we ought to do everything we can to stop him if we don't think that he's moving in the right direction. And of course, I don't think he is. So that's part one. Part two is a political matter. This is an easy mistake for everybody to make. Republicans and Democrats make it, but Democrats are making it more. Is that if someone co-opts an issue, immigration, abortion, capital punishment, pick all the hard ones, not the easy ones. And then you don't show up and tell your side of the story because you think that the other person, that people just completely agree with the other politician, you're making a terrible mistake. Because that's not the way. One of the things we're relearning in these focus groups is that all of these American citizens, they're very smart. They have a lot of common sense. They're very complicated. They don't like, it's not true that just because somebody thinks a certain way about abortion, they might think the same way about immigration, or immigration about whatever. And oh, by the way, in those very spaces, even if, for example, they don't think, that they're in favor of harsh immigration policies, it doesn't mean that they agree that you ought to be yanking somebody off the street without due process, throwing them in a hole, deporting them into another nation, and not being able to account to the American people. So I think what we have to just remind ourselves, again, particularly politicians, you can't keep putting people in boxes. And the only way that you can know is to ask them. You really have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're very smart. They know what they want. They know what hurts. They know what feels good. They may not know what the prescription is for getting out of it, but they know they don't want to hurt anymore. And they're willing to work with you, but not if you do not go see them. And so what happens is, when we think somebody owns an issue, or we go, okay, that's a red state, we're not going to go to that state. That's a huge mistake, because there are a lot of people that live in those things that we call red that actually think the way you do. And oh, by the way, if you influence them or you give them a good pathway out, they will then go talk to their neighbors about it. And then that's how you win. You have to go work it. My grandma used to say, it's like elbow grease. You can't win cheap. You can't just win from the sky with TV ads. You can't just win, by social media. You have to go be with them and see them. And then you got a shot. If you don't show up, you got no shot. None.
Got it. So what is the end goal of your project? Do you hope to come out with a big report? Do you hope to go to Democrats who are in campaigns and kind of help coach them in the lessons that you've learned? What's your game plan for what you do with all this great data?
Well, the most important thing is to learn. is to listen and to learn about where people are on what they think about issues, how they express themselves. Now, Jen, you, I don't mean to hurt my feelings of all my friends in Washington. I am not of Washington. I spent a year there.
I noticed that.
I'm a local cat, and I have my feelings about Washington, and I have my great respect, for the work that American citizens try to do in Washington, D.C. But I think Americans rightly think that Washington is broken. And I don't think they see many solutions coming out of Washington, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And then when there are solutions, the ones that Donald Trump has given us, they're chaotic, they're cruel, they don't make any sense. There is a huge amount of glorious work being done in local jurisdictions in America. There are about, I don't know, 30,000 cities, towns, and counties. There are 3,000 of them that are somewhat larger. Innovative things are happening all over the place. This is not to say that they should do it without Washington's help. It would be much better if Washington showed up and there was a great partnership between the federal, state, and local governments, but they're not waiting around. And so we're trying to listen to what it is they say about the things that they like. And oftentimes they will tell us, because they're not ideologically bent, they're not necessarily MAGA acolytes, or they're not necessarily Bernie Sanders, just followers. They're like, listen, this particular person that works down here that's an elected official is doing a really good job, and they happen to be a Republican, but this is what they're doing. So it's not partisan. It's about getting it done. So we're trying to listen to the language, because a lot of times what pollsters will do is they'll do all these things, and then they'll come up with an accumulation of what they heard, and they'll break it down to one phrase, and that phrase doesn't make any sense to anybody. This is maybe where, and then everybody goes, well, if you're a true Democrat, you have to say this particular phrase, or you say you have to do that. That's not the way people think. But people, when I found this to be universally true, no matter where you are, if you're in New Hampshire, or you're in Napakiak, Alaska, or you're in Lowndes County, if you're in Alabama, if people can feel you, and we use this term a lot in New Orleans, hey, do you feel me? It's a colloquialism. They will go, you know what, that person, I feel connected to them. And I'm trying to listen really, really carefully to what has been missed. So it's not just performative, but it's policy, it's language, and at the end of the day, it's coming up with things that make sense, that will make people's lives easier. That's primarily what they want. And it's not that they don't care about other issues. It is just really about what they want us focused on that's most important to them. And right now, it's the economy. Right now, they understand the constitutional crisis. Every one of them is keyed into this tariff issue, though. At 100% of people that we're talking to, left, right, middle, are like, wait a minute, man, this is not what we signed up for. We did not sign up for having higher prices, paying $10,000 more for a car, not being able to afford a house, not being able to have groceries on our shelves. We're not interested in that. We get the Ukraine thing and what's going on, and we don't really like what the president's doing. We don't understand the Musk thing. That's really weird, about how this billionaire came in who's unaccountable, who seems to not be dealing with waste, fraud, and abuse, but seems to be dealing with, other stuff that doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, we think government can be more efficient and more effective. So how do we do both of those things? So I'm hoping that when this is done, we will be able to put out a report. We'll share it with the whole world. And then people can learn from it if they choose to, or they can leave it aside if they don't want the benefit of what I think is going to have some very insightful information about it, about how elected officials and how not-for-profits and other folks can actually make the world a better place by making sure that everybody is included.
This is fascinating, Mitch, and it's the kind of data and information that I love and that our readers and our viewers love. So we're going to bug you a lot and have you back as you're traveling around the country. And maybe even when we get you to Washington, D.C. now and then. But we might even follow along. So thank you for all of the work you're doing. It seems like exactly what needs to be done. And I think you're absolutely right about people making assumptions about Americans because some phrase doesn't work or some candidate doesn't pan out. So fundamentals. So thank you for joining us, and we will look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. It was great to be with you.